الولايات المتحدة هي الدولة الوحيدة اللي تقدر تمنع إسرائيل من مهاجمة رفح. هل أمريكا هتعمل ده؟ ده اللي هحاول أفهمه من ضيفتي المرشحة للانتخابات الرئاسية الأمريكية دكتور جيل ستاين، اللي عندها مواقف قوية في عدد من القضايا الحيوية وعلى رأسها السياسة الخارجية، وخاصة موقفها من الحروب والصراعات الدولية. خلونا نعرف منها أكتر. برحب بجيل ستاين. Miss Stein, I'm welcoming you here on air with us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamal.
Right. Let me start by looking at the developments that are happening today and all these warnings of an invasion of Rafah. And you had a position on that. I think you made one clear position, as if you've read things early enough back on the 12th of February about any military operation in Rafah. Can you tell me how you see it today?
Oh, our fears have been validated, really our worst fears and more. Invading Rafah now is such a catastrophe, a human rights catastrophe, an extension of the genocide that is being carried out now against the people of Gaza and Palestine. And invading Rafah now stands to massively enlarge the conflict, which is already enlarging. The U.S. and Israel are in active hostilities now and bombing 4 or 5 other countries, Israel's neighbors. And it was stated some time ago that for Egypt, this is an absolute red line, and it stands to jeopardize the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. There are large rallies taking place also in recent weeks in Jordan, where the people are also clamoring to put an end to the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan. So even with its most sympathetic and immediate neighbors, invading Rafah is an absolute disaster that will stand to destabilize further the entire Middle East.
You've previously said as well that the United States is capable of stopping any such operation and stopping the entire massacre that is happening there. If it wanted, tomorrow they can do it. Why do you think the United States is not doing it?
I think the United States has a long history of defending Israel as its so-called unsinkable battleship in the Middle East. Israel allows the U.S. to have a strategic outpost really controlling the flow of oil through the Middle East. It was Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, who first used that term, that Israel is the unsinkable battleship for the United States in the Middle East. It's a very misguided policy that the U.S. has, assuming that it is the leader of the empire across the world. This has brought the U.S. into terrible conflicts. Since the 9/11 disaster in this country, we've conducted one war after another that has been absolutely disastrous, having killed many millions of people whose lives were needlessly sacrificed, mainly in pursuit of weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. This is a policy of the United States that needs to be ended. The United States needs to come into the 21st century and be part of a multipolar world. We are no longer a unipolar world where the policies of the world are being dictated by the United States. We are not in a position to do that anymore. This is a disaster not only for the larger world and the stability of the Middle East in particular, but also for the people of the United States. This endless war machine is using half of our congressional dollars that are being spent on death and destruction around the world, while the urgent needs of the people in this country are going sorely unmet. So this is absolutely not sustainable.
What we can see with all the conflicts that are arising, and the United States is standing by one side against the other, like we're seeing here in the Middle East, or like we're seeing in Russia, Ukraine, and we see that the costs are not only economic, but could really trigger, who knows, a world war that could happen. So who could bring the administration to its mind that this is not in the right interest of any single individual in the world, let alone the entire population of the United States?
That's right. And fortunately, the American people already get what's going on. And by a huge majority, the American people do not want an expanding war. We don't want a genocidal war to start with. The American people are very clear. And a poll early on done by Reuters in November of last year showed that 68% of the American public demand an immediate ceasefire and a negotiated solution. And those numbers have been borne out by poll after poll after poll. The American people are horrified, to tell you the truth, and the uprisings that we're seeing now on campuses across the country are more evidence of that. The boycott of Starbucks, for example, which has been a major factor in Starbucks crashing, as you know, in terms of their financial numbers and their stock price has really gone down the tubes. So this is a movement that is not going to be stopped, which has enormous support and enormous power. And that is why our campaign, you know, is in this race, because otherwise there will be three candidates that are all pro-war, pro-genocide, anti-worker campaigns. Ours will be the one campaign across the country that is fighting to stop this genocide and this endless war machine immediately. And I think, you know, the administration is beginning to see the writing on the wall here. And we must, you know, hold the fort here and continue to insist that the administration do what is not only the right thing, but also what is the practical, the pragmatic thing, and the only financially responsible thing to do, which is to end this genocide and the endless war machine surrounding it.
I'm speaking to you from a channel which is considered to be the mainstream media of Egypt, but actually the mainstream media in the United States has been saying a lot along the past decades. Now, when the media is different, the youth that you've talked about in universities and different ones, they are following different media that is not lying to them, that is not covering for anybody. You as a candidate, definitely, you know that the power of youth is, I mean, you cannot match this power because they are changing. They brought the Middle East into the United States. Then definitely anyone who can be passing around their messages, not regarding the Middle East, but regarding the status of the United States to them. Do you really bet on youth and the means of communications with them?
Yes, and it really has been youth who have led the way on so many critical issues over the course of our history. Certainly ending the war in Vietnam, that was driven by the youth of my generation. Promoting women's status in this country and the rights of women, the environmental movement in this country, establishing the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. All of these, the movement for African American rights, all of these, the civil rights movement was very much driven by young people who started the lunch counter sit-ins in the South when the adult leadership was very reluctant to do that. So young people have always led the charge on social change that's been absolutely critical to progress for human rights and peace and justice. And they have so much at stake now. They have been so courageous and principled in standing up to the onslaught of the riot police, who are the only ones bringing the violence. It's come from the police, and it's also come from the Zionist mobs. You know, that's where the violence is coming from. It's not coming from the peaceful encampments. And students have put everything on the line: their graduation, their degrees, their tuition, their future prospects for employment. They really understand what is at stake here. As Gaza goes, we all go. It is absolutely unacceptable. We are looking at the normalization of the torture and murder of children on an industrial scale. This is simply unacceptable. We're looking at the destruction of human rights and international law. On all of these counts, you know, students recognize that their future is Gaza's future. Our future is Gaza's future, and they are going to stand up until we see this through.
Let me take you to one major challenge that you face, which is the duopoly of the Republicans and the Democrats. It's either this or that. Right now, Americans, and I really feel sorry for their choices, that they fall into the choice of one of two candidates they do not really wish to support, but they have no way except to go outside that norm. Do you think you can break this duopoly? Do you think you can handle somebody like former President Trump or President Biden with all the might and the power and the support they have and the money and the media and all this?
They have all of those traditional political resources and infrastructure. What they don't have is the support of the American people. The American people are extremely distressed about having these two zombie candidates being forced down our throats again. The first time they ran, people were largely voting not for one of these candidates, but against the one that they hated the most. That's no way to run a democracy. We need a vision forward. Democracy needs a moral compass. It needs a clear agenda and a vision of where we're going. And I think the American people are very clear right now. A large majority, the largest numbers ever right now, at 63%, are saying that they badly want an independent third party because the two major parties have done such a poor job of serving everyday people. Americans don't have jobs. They are living paycheck to paycheck. They have jobs, but they're not decent jobs, and they don't pay any kind of living wage. 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Half of all people who rent their housing are this close to losing their housing. They're extremely financially stressed just trying to keep their housing. Americans are broadly in debt, 100 million in medical debt, 44 million students locked into student debt. So Americans are very unhappy campers right now, and they are not happy to see both political parties at the drop of a hat appropriating another $90 billion to these endless wars that are not making us safer. They are making us less safe, and they're absolutely impoverishing us as well. So this is a perfect storm for change right now. And in fact, there will be Biden and Trump and also Robert F. Kennedy, who's likely to get on the ballot across the country. So you have three candidates who will be splitting the pro-war, pro-genocide vote. Our campaign is now on track to be on the ballot across the country as the only anti-genocide, anti-war, pro-worker campaign. So we stand to have a very unified base and the only one against three campaigns who are splitting the pro-war vote. In that kind of setting, it's actually possible to win the Electoral College with as little as 26% of the popular vote. And if you consider that it's 68% right now who want an end to the war, it's entirely possible for the American people to prevail in this election. We really are at a breaking point, and Americans are ready to stand up like we never have been before.
I'll be sending you this interview without the interpretation to use it in the English language as it is. And
Terrific.
from here, I'm saying I vote, if I were American, I would vote Jill Stein. But I'm sure a lot of people can hear me from relatives, friends, and people we know in the United States. And I hope they vote for you so that you'd be one person who is against wars, genocide, and for the development of the entire world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you.